While the pension payments won't be on the ballot in form of a constitutional amendment this year, New Jersey residents will still be on the hook for billions of dollars of debt, and there are still no solutions in sight. Stay tuned to learn more.
And it really goes to prove that if you don't measure something, nothing will be done about it.
And we have to make New Jersey's business climate more attractive for entrepreneurs.
We are Wonder Women. Like, look at all these women and what they've done and what they've tried. And even if they didn't succeed, they gave it a shot.
I don't think it's fair to put a $4 or $5 billion price tag on middle-class New Jerseyans.
We've got a great lifestyle here, and I don't want to see it ruined because politicians can't manage our finances properly.
Welcome, I'm Lisa Allen, filming from Hometown Studios in Summit, New Jersey, and this is As a Matter of Fact. New Jersey has seen job growth over the last couple years, but we are still a struggling state. Over the summer, we've been grappling with the growing pension crisis, legislators' lack of consensus on how to fix the insolvent transportation fund, and perpetual stalemates on issues ranging from increasing the gas tax to creating new school funding formulas that work for all New Jerseyans. Helping us to break down the state of affairs in New Jersey today and to discuss our biggest challenges that lie ahead, I welcome Gordon MacInnes, President of New Jersey Policy Perspective, a nonpartisan think tank that researches and analyzes economic issues for New Jersey. Thank you so much for coming today, Gordon.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, this is such an honor to have you here today. You have a deep experience within public policy. You've been in the Assembly. You have been a senator, and probably for the better part of your life, you've been in the governor's office, you've been around public policy. So thank you for joining today. I have really wanted to find out your opinion on the top 3 challenges that New Jersey's going to be facing over the next year that's going to lead into the 5-10 years.
Okay. Well, first of all, New Jersey's broke. It doesn't have the money to meet its past, current, or future obligations. There's a reason for that. And the reason is that about 20 years ago, politicians thought that it would be okay to use the pension funds, which are collected every 2 weeks from the employees and every year from the employers, and invested, to use those funds to take care of other business. And so we started doing that. It was like a big ATM. And because it's so complicated, we have a whole profession called actuarial sciences. They employ a vocabulary that nobody outside the profession understands. So they would sound the alarm that we needed to invest more to get the pension so we could pay them off in 20 years. They were ignored by the politicians. So we're now at a point where there's not enough money to meet what are really contractual obligations with public employees. And it's going to go bust. So the full payment won't be available to civil servants in 7 or 8 years. They won't be available to teachers in 10 or 11 years, and it's getting worse. So that's the first thing that needs to be honestly discussed, and it's not. So that's number one. The fact is that having 7 or 8 years before it goes and pensions have to be reduced, or everything else that we do has to be thrown into pensions, we have an immediate emergency, which is the Transportation Trust Fund. So if you think about New Jersey's assets, location is number one. There's no other state that enjoys the benefits we do. We're in the middle of the world's largest consumer market. We are close to and available to the most important city in the world, in the north, and to Philadelphia in the south. We've got a transportation network that was developed beginning in the 60s that allows people to get around, through, up and down New Jersey, and to live here and get to work in New York or Philadelphia. That's a huge asset. It only works, though, if we maintain, improve, and modernize our transportation networks. We started out in 1984, a long time, well, it's 32 years ago, with the Transportation Trust Fund. A very important idea. Let's set aside money each year so we can plan ahead, because you don't build a highway in 9 months.
Right.
So that was done, and pretty soon they had to play with it, and the idea initially was we'll pay for it each year, put some money aside, then we'll have the money available. Then they realized it makes a lot more sense to borrow money. Hey, you build a bridge? The bridge is going to last for 30 years. Why shouldn't people who are driving over it in 25 years pay their share? Which is what you do with when you issue bonds to finance these complicated projects, and that's sort of what we did. We've now got about $15 billion in transportation bonds that we are on the hook for. But that's okay because people down the road, no pun intended, will pay their share as well. That's fair. But then we've also done other things, which is to say, because we had this piggy bank, the pension fund, we did not do what our Constitution requires. The Constitution's very clear, and for 40 years after it was adopted, the Supreme Court, governors, legislatures of both parties honored the Constitution slavishly. The Constitution says a pretty simple thing. You can borrow, but you have to get public approval to do so, because the public is going to be paying it back over a long period of time. Number two, each year you have to have a budget, and your spending has to match up with your revenues. You can't be doing things like borrowing money to pay for this year's budget.
Right.
Because, hey, the bill comes due in 5 years, the people who are going to pay it didn't get any of the benefits. So you have to balance the budget each year. And beginning again about 20 years ago, governors and legislators from both parties, and really abetted by the Supreme Court, decided that this ATM was too tempting, and they wanted to do things that would allow them not to face the brutal truth, which is if you're paying for public services, you have to pay this year. Frequently what that means is from time to time you have to raise taxes. No politician wants to do that.
Right.
And if you can avoid it by playing games that nobody understands except the actuaries, if you can do that, let's do it. And the legislators love to go along with that. And so we've had a succession of governors, again from both parties, legislatures from both parties, who have not honored the mandates of the Constitution. And from time to time, the Supreme Court, wanting to avoid what they said would be disruption or whatever, refused to enforce the Constitution. And we're in a pickle. And it's been 20 years in the making. We're not going to get out of it in any governor's term. But we need to recognize where we are, what brought on the problem, and be truthful about addressing it. And so far, I don't believe that the political leadership of New Jersey believes they have to do that.
Right. So what else, how are we going to get our head around getting our fiscal house in order to face some of the other issues? Because one of the bigger critical issues for me is education.
Right.
How are we going to continue to fund a vibrant education system when we're so in debt?
Right, and you've put your finger on a great asset, all right, which is frequently ignored in the public discussion. Only Massachusetts kids in the public schools do better over time than Jersey kids. We're second in the nation typically. There are 2 or 3 other states, Minnesota, Vermont, New Hampshire, that do about as well as we do, but we're right up there, top 5 states. And we have great public schools. You wouldn't know it from the public discussion. You'd think, gee, this is a real terrible place and it's not working well. Actually, it works quite well. Summit is a very good example. And so you have probably too many school districts. It costs to hire a superintendent, and you only have 400 kids in the elementary school. Why would you do that? There are things we could do to improve it, but we have ignored that, and we now have before us proposals, competing proposals. The governor wants to say that the court order that we pay special attention to kids who are very poor and attend school in very poor school districts, that needs to be wiped out by the voters. and that the kids in those districts that now receive more funding than they would, for example, in Summit, those kids will have to get along, even though they're going to have 70 kids in every classroom, given the magnitude of the cuts the governor is proposing. Another proposal is, let's take the formula we had enacted in 2008, which was a good formula. It took into consideration what problems kids presented. So if you have a kid who's autistic, you don't educate that kid for the same price that you would a kid who's reading 2 grades above grade level.
Absolutely.
It's different. If you have a kid who goes home every night to a family that doesn't speak English, and they learned only one language and don't know English, that takes extra effort. And when you take extra effort, it costs you money. And when you have kids that, again, very poor, from very poor families, going to school only with other very poor kids, they have a disadvantage that has been recognized for 50 years by the research and billions of data points. You have to do something different than you do for kids who are attending school in Short Hills.
Right.
Doesn't work that way.
Right.
So the governor wants to ignore all of that. The Senate president has a plan that would get back to the 2008 school formula, adjust the funding for some of the urban districts, use some of that to improve the funding in a lot of districts that are not benefiting from the court mandate in Abbott, and help them fund the dealing with kids who don't speak English or kids who've got special education problems.
I also think it's going to take some political will around the state. If you look at it, you mentioned there are several school districts across New Jersey. There's nearly 600 school districts in New Jersey. We like home state rule, right? We like, Summit likes their own system, New Providence likes their own system. Are we going to be looking at potentially combining school systems in order to make them really effective, or is that going to be taken off the table and we just have to think about the school funding formula? Is that the answer?
Well, it's a good question. It's an important question. It's a question that's been asked for about 50 years. And
you mean I'm not the first asking it?
You're not the first. So you do have 600 school districts in New Jersey. The number, if we were looking back over 50 years, used to be 603. Here's what's happened. The Chathams, not too far from here, decided to combine their school districts. There was one for the borough and one for the township. Now there's just one school district. The Princetons, both of these towns, by the way, have the same names, right? The Princetons decided years ago they had borough and township schools. They'd have a Princeton school district. So we lost 2 districts there. And then there was a little town on the Delaware River Gap that I think had 2 residents that decided they would merge with. So basically, the push, what's probably a sensible push, to consolidate districts that are small or small enough has been around for a long time. The state law that allows it doesn't really encourage it. It's written in a way that makes it politically very difficult in terms of addressing higher costs and how you distribute the debt that the 2 districts or the 3 districts bring together. So districts will talk about it, then they'll get the numbers, and they'll say, and one district will vote yes enthusiastically because they're going to see their property taxes go down, and they're going to see the other district assume some of the debt that they've incurred. And the district that's going to do that votes no with enthusiasm. So it just is very difficult to work out.
There are a couple people, legislators, that had brought to the table that potentially getting rid of the local superintendents and letting the county superintendents come in.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Tough to do. First of all, there are a number of states that do quite well in the quality of education. Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida. I mean, there are an awful lot of states that have county-based school systems. Most of the southern states do. Here's what you run into immediately. So you're in Union County if you live in Summit. So you're going to have a single school district that would allow kids presumably to cross municipal boundaries to go to school. And you mentioned New Providence and Summit. There wouldn't be a big outcry if it turned out some kids from New Providence came to the school. What happens when you get to Elizabeth or Plainfield? That may inspire some concern and opposition. So you have that situation. It exists in many of the counties, Passaic County, Patterson and Passaic City, and Wayne. How are they going to get together? Newark and Short Hill, I don't know. That raises all sorts of usually unspoken issues and criticism, and it lays the groundwork for defeating any effort to create county-based school systems. I think it would be very difficult. By the way, one last point on it. When you look at the savings, sure, you cut down on the number of superintendents, you cut down on the number of business administrators, so the central office gets shrunk because you can have one superintendent, one. What happens when you take all of that, since most of your expenses are for teachers and schools, the overall effect on taxpayers is not significant. So you can maybe operate more effectively, maybe you get more of the money into the classroom instead of downtown. Hey, it's not a bad idea, but in terms of what you had hoped for, to see a 15% in your reduction in your property taxes, not likely to happen.
Right. We still go back to the fact that we are significantly in debt with the healthcare and pensions. And Summit actually saw a huge increase. We went above the 2% cap, and a lot of towns did because the healthcare costs. There's no end in sight. Is there any way to fix this?
There's a way to fix it if we are honest about how we got into the situation in the first place and stop repeating the actions that put us in this deep, deep hole. And that's where we use the pension fund as an ATM. So you have two different things. You got retiree health benefits, and we're short about $65 billion on that. And then you've got the pensions, and we're short about 80 billion, 60, well, we're short about another 70 billion on that.
Give or take.
That doesn't include where we're short for local police pensions, local municipal employee pensions. Add that up, you are close to $200 billion. As I said, it's taken us 20 years to get into this very deep hole. You have to start by being honest about how we got into the hole. You have to stop relying on what is now about $70 billion in pension assets. And nobody's going to notice if you borrow $1 billion this year to make the pension payments. Because it's still $69 billion, which sounds like an awful lot of money to most of us. So what's the problem? But that's what we're doing now. And it's going to catch up. And when it catches up, we're going to be in a very bad place. So we need to start recognizing it now with an honest description of what the problem is and how we got into it and what you might do to fix it. There is no easy, simple, understandable solution available.
Is the gas tax the answer?
No. The amount required to put our funding of pensions and health benefits back on a track where we will have enough in the bank to pay future pensions, not possible. You're talking about tax increases that nobody would propose. So there is a proposal that says, well, let's take retiree health benefits, and we're short $65 billion to pay those in the future. Let's not provide a platinum plan for future public employees. That's one proposal. And there's another proposal which says, well, let's cut the platinum plan for people who have been paying in for the platinum plan, but let's cut it off where they are now and to put them on a gold plan, right?
Right.
If you do that, you save billions of dollars going forward. Will that be enough to finance both the retiree health benefits and to increase the payments to the pensions? You might be able to do something in the out years. Initially, it's going to be relatively small, but at least if you did that or talked about it or got close to enacting it, you would be on a pathway to to if you will, setting the bottom.
Right.
Because right now we're still digging the hole.
Yeah. And Tom Byrne said in my last interview that we have solutions. We know how to fix this problem. Other states have fixed the problem. It's almost the political will to lock people in a room and don't let them leave until they, I don't know if the word concede or compromise is the word we're looking for, but to make choices and compromise to things that they normally wouldn't have done.
Right. So politicians are pretty sensible about not offending their strongest allies. Now, you have a bunch of legislators in New Jersey who enjoy support from powerful unions. The last thing they want to do in looking ahead to re-election is to switch those unions from being allies, supporters, contributors, volunteers in their re-election campaign and make them your most bitter enemy. So the chances of getting that to happen, despite the room, however it's configured, whether there are locks on the doors or not, you're still going to have to face that reality. I agree with Tom Byrne that there might be some things that could happen that would require a example of leadership that we've not seen in many years in this state, particularly by the governor.
Right.
And that the governor's got the authority to command the attention, to make the case statewide. Nobody else can do that.
Right. Do we see a fix with the transportation fund?
Not yet.
No.
As we're speaking, maybe by the time it airs,
Yeah.
we'll see a fix. Right now, and throughout the summer, beginning in late spring, the conversation between the governor and the speaker and the Senate president has been a dangerous conversation because it's, first of all, to their credit, they agreed that we needed to have a significant stabilization of transportation funding. You can't do it with a nickel on a gallon of gas, raising it. You got to be big.
Yeah.
So they talked about 23 cents a gallon. That's a noticeable increase. It's only 14.5 cents now. That's more than 100%. For politicians to do that is an act of some courage. Then the governor steps in, late. He wasn't a part of this conversation all spring. He didn't even include it in his State of the State. It's a real crisis. He didn't even mention it. And in the budget address, he only mentioned it to say, well, we might have to do something with the Transportation Trust Fund. It's no crisis. And if you want to do it, you got to give me something on the other side. Let's get rid of the estate tax, for example. So here we are. We can't pay our current bills. We can't pay our past bills. We can't pay our future bills. The governor is saying, let's blow another hole in the budget. Let's take away, in his case, with the Assembly Speaker, $1.8 billion. That's a number that doesn't mean much to people. That's a huge decrease.
Take $1.8
By
billion.
getting rid of the sales tax by 1 penny.
Oh, yeah.
Cut the sales tax 1 penny, that's 14%.
Yeah.
You lose $1.8 billion. And as I said, we're not paying our bills now. We're avoiding all of these issues. And if that were to take place, where you cut the sales tax, you would make the problem even worse.
Right.
Can't do it. Not if you're sensible. Not if you're conservative. You can't do that.
Yeah. Listen, I am all for tax breaks. I don't see why we would cut the sales tax to fill a gap. You're taking revenue away.
You're taking revenue away.
From the
And by the
budget.
way, how many of you would notice it if you go to and you buy your $40 whatever, and the sales tax instead of being $2.80 is $2.02 or whatever it works out to be? Is that going to make a difference to you?
Yeah. And we're winding down our time. I wanted to get to casinos.
Okay.
Just really quickly, because it's going to be on the ballot that we might have a casino in
Right.
Jersey City.
Right.
that's very close to here.
Right,
And I
and
think-
East Rutherford.
And East Rutherford, right. And I think about the congestion.
Right.
Already it's tough enough to get
Right.
here. You had issues coming when you got here with all the construction. Is this a way that we really want to raise money in New Jersey?
No, it's crazy. It's absolutely nonsensical. That's a strong word. Here's why. First of all, the proponents for it say they want to help Atlantic City. That's not true. What they want to do is to destroy Atlantic City's as a destination for gamblers, because Wall Street, looking at it without any prejudice, has said you're going to lose 3 or 4 casinos in Atlantic City if you build the 2 up north.
Right.
Secondly, you mentioned it, congestion.
Yeah.
Route 3 goes past the MetLife Stadium and what is supposed to be one of the largest malls in America, called American Dream, plus the Meadowlands racetrack. It's congested. There's nothing in the plan to authorize casinos, which takes care of the transportation. Third, if we do it, New York's going to come running.
Right.
They're going to say no to the moratorium on any casinos in Manhattan, because we have the Jersey City Casino. That's going to rely on ferries coming from Manhattan. 55 million tourists a year coming to Manhattan, getting them to get on a ferry and come to the Jersey City waterfront. New York isn't going to allow that to happen.
Okay.
And the chair of the committee in the Assembly's already said, the day after that passes, I'm putting the bill in, and we're going to allow casinos in New York City to be built, and we'll get them built before they even get theirs up in New Jersey. That will destroy the market.
Right.
So it's a terrible idea.
Okay, I'm glad we agree on that. All right, we have to wrap it up.
Okay.
Because I'm having such a great conversation. We didn't get to the Meadowlands and if we should be in the business of tax breaks for the business there.
Right.
We didn't really get into the discussion as much as I'd like to about Atlantic City, so I'm
Right.
going to have you come back. On your final thought,
Right.
I want to know from you. I've been involved in watching politics for the last 12 years.
Okay.
You've been in it pretty much your entire life.
Right.
Is today worse than it's been ever in politics? I would compare it to 1968.
Yes, it is. It's worse for a number of reasons. First of all, we formerly ran a state government where the parties could change in terms of who was the governor or who ran the legislature. But people had they were in the same sort of general universe about what needed to get done, and there'd be disagreements about whether the tax should be raised by 4% or 8%, but they would deal with it. And it wouldn't be unanimous, but in the end, they all talked to each other, and they came across the aisle and addressed problems with the governor and with the legislature. That's changed. Frankly, I think our governor is more interested in his national standing than he is in the problems of New Jersey. That's a harsh thing to say, but I've reached that conclusion given the stance that he's taken on a lot of issues where they seem to agree with what the National Republican Party and Donald Trump believe or talk about. Right. And are less addressed to the needs in New Jersey. That's a huge problem, given the fact that he owns the microphone.
Right. We're going to have to end it there.
Okay.
Darn. I feel like we were just
you
getting
get me
started.
And I just never stop. I'm sorry.
No, we're going to have you come back. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
All right. And so I'd like to thank Gordon MacInnes with New Jersey Policy Perspective for joining me today. While the state of New Jersey faces mounting financial challenges, I leave you with this quote for Abraham Lincoln. "The struggle for today is not altogether for today, it is for a vast future also." New Jersey has the potential for a vast future. What will the outcome of our struggle say about us in a generation or two? It's anyone's guess. More to come next month on New Jersey's economy, jobs, and what the future holds for its residents. Thank you for joining me. Check us out on Facebook at our website at www.hometowntv.org or on Facebook at Hometown TV. Thank you so much. We'll see you next month.